The way I describe a lot of individuals who are cognitively inflexible is they go through life feeling this whiplash effect. Like, what? You didn't tell me? What? You're changing things on me? What? You weren't clear with me. When the person on the other end, usually the parent, is like, I was super clear with you. Like, what happened? It's like, well, you weren't clear enough. They didn't have enough time to adjust to that change that you thought was really insignificant.
And welcome back to another episode of Living with FASD. Today's guest is so very special. I would like everyone to welcome Ms. Eileen Devine to the mic. She is near and dear to my heart because it's because of this dear woman that I ended up learning about and diving into the world of FASD. So, Eileen, such an honor to have you here in this conversation with me.
Oh, thank you. That's a very sweet introduction. And I was honored to ask to be here. And it's just one of those, like you and I talking before we hit record about what's happened in the last year since we've been in more kind of consistent touch. And you never know that when the information that you feel is just kind of, you say offhandedly, will impact people and they'll take it with them. It's just another reminder of that, which has certainly happened to me with other people too, who have done the same to me. So I'm so happy to have had that impact on you.
Yeah. So the backstory, everyone, is that I had reached out to Eileen to be a guest speaker at the foster adopt agency I was working at the time, 7 years ago. And I just absolutely loved everything she had to say. And she was teaching at, is it Portland or Seattle?
Portland.
Portland. Yeah.
Yep.
Teaching a postgraduate little certificate program, I think, was it?
Yes.
And encouraged me. And so I was reading it. And I was like, oh, yeah, I got to do it. And then I found out that it's because I am a professional student. Then I found out it was only for social workers from Washington or Oregon. Darn the luck. And so I reached back out to Eileen and she pointed me to Facets, and the rest is history. Because at Facets, I figured out I'm also on the spectrum.
Yeah.
Got that confirmation from my mom. So I just feel like we've come kind of full circle. Now we're more colleagues than anything else.
Yes, absolutely.
And I'm just thrilled. And Eileen is now also a podcaster.
Right.
Tell us about, your show.
Yeah. So the show that I have, the podcast, is Brain First Parenting with Eileen Devine. And it is all about, it's geared towards parents, but I have a lot of professionals who listen in too. And it's all about, what does it mean to have a child who lives with a unique neurobiological makeup? So what I mean by that, the neurobiology piece, is what does it mean for them to have a brain that works differently than society expects? And what does it mean for them to have a nervous system that is more fragile than society expects? So it's on lots of various topics related to that.
And are you also still on the board with Facet?
No.
No?
I was
Okay.
lucky enough to be on their board for a very long time, but it's been several years since I've been on their board.
But as a former board member, you are wholly familiar with their primary characteristics, secondary/tertiary symptoms, which for the audience means that primary characteristics are those quirks and bugaboos that are the direct result of the alcohol exposure.
Yeah.
The secondary and tertiary symptoms are the social, emotional, sometimes legal fallout, right?
That's right.
From the ways that we cope that, seem to be for a good purpose, but cause us much further harm.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm very familiar because not only was I on their board, but when my daughter, who's now 16, when she was, I would say 3 years old, maybe 4, went to training with Diane Malbin, and that forever changed my life. I think it was a 3-day training at the time. I was lucky enough that she was here in Portland, so I got to be there in person. And then I was in the second cohort of the training of the trainers.
Okay. I was in the 5th.
Okay. Yeah. So
next year it was on Zoom.
Okay. Yeah. Diane was still, she wasn't in retirement yet. And so that model and Diane's work will forever talk about being near and dear to my heart and influencing the work that I do today for sure. And you mentioned the Portland State University program. That was actually a program that Diane taught until she went into retirement.
Okay.
And then they reached out to me and asked if I would take it over. So there's lots and lots of connections.
Yeah.
Yeah, there. And I'm forever grateful to Facets and for Diane's work and the influence that it's had on my personal and professional life.
Yeah. Yeah. As am I. All the facilitators that are on staff there that I interacted with, they're so passionate about
Mhm.
helping us, right?
Yeah.
Learn how to be of the most support to people.
Yeah.
You don't find many programs where there's that much passion involved. So
Yeah.
very near and dear to my heart. But having worked in child welfare, I tend to bring in more elements of trauma that are compared to the classic facets structure.
Yeah,
No.
it's interesting to hear you say that because I feel like, yeah, depending on the environment or the team that I'm working with, there are these different elements. I mean, I talk a lot about the nervous system. That's a piece that is also, I've gone through many trainings related to polyvagal theory and relational neurosciences, which has only added to the foundation that I
Yeah.
got with Facets. And then the trauma lens and attachment and what does that all mean? It's this added layer. But the other piece that I spend at least 50%, if not more, of my time talking about and training about is how do we attend to the parents and the
Yeah.
caregivers? It's great that we have all this information to help them shift their lens, see their child's neurobiology for what it is, all their fragility, all of that kind of stuff. And also, it's really hard to make that
Mhm.
leap from knowing into doing, right? And if
Yeah.
I had to really simplify where I spend the majority of my time in my work, and whether it's supporting professionals or parents, it's helping people make that leap.
Kind
And
of when I worked in addictions, they talk about this is the furthest distance in the world.
mm,
From knowing something
yeah,
and believing it and
embodiment.
walking it out. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, 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 yeah. So yeah, it's interesting to hear about kind of the pieces that it sounds like, recognize are helpful to pull in
Mhm.
to build out that understanding more.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. The I YouTube is only one of the platforms I'm on, but it's the one that has the playlists.
Okay.
And this year, season 4, I created a playlist which you will be featured on. Today's conversation will be part of, and
Okay.
that's on neurodiversity more inclusively, but looking
Mhm.
at these characteristics or symptoms, the challenges that we have to
Mm.
whatever degree they affect us, how that might look similar in other types of neurodivergence
Yeah.
or how it might be different.
Mhm.
Yeah. So when we kicked around ideas, I really liked your suggestion of talking about cognitive rigidity,
Yeah. Yeah.
right? And being someone with FASD, I can attest to the fact that sometimes it's just really hard to get me to change my mind on something.
Yeah.
And my husband would probably say, she got that right. She's being honest.
He would agree with you.
So
Mm.
now, given the fact that this podcast, living with FASD is more for the adults living with FASD than it is for parents, although I'm so happy to provide this hope for parents as well. What are some ways that we as people who live with this
Yeah.
can do to recognize what's going on and then kind of stop it and move on?
Yeah, yeah. So one of the reasons why I suggested cognitive rigidity is because in my experience, even though it is a cognitive skill set, just like, say, executive functioning,
Mhm.
it gets misinterpreted as a character flaw more than maybe any
Yes,
other. Yes, yes. There's so much judgment around it. And so maybe backing up and talking about what the definition of cognitive flexibility is.
yeah.
It is characterized by very controlling behavior, difficulty dealing with ambiguity, difficulty dealing with change. You can say, oh, it's not resonating at all. Difficulty shifting what I call cognitive states, like from I'm anticipating, I'm really excited. It didn't happen. And
Yeah.
it's nobody's fault, but it didn't work out. And I cannot shift in manage that
Mm.
disappointment. It is about not being able to tolerate when your needs or
Yeah.
expectations are not met, and sometimes not met immediately. All of those are about the brain. So the inability to go with the flow, put
Mhm.
somebody else's needs before your own, like acquiesce, like, "Ah, okay, we can do it your way this time. That's
Yeah.
fine," right? All of those pieces. Now, if we look at it through
You seem to reference impatience in that mix as well, you
impatience,
know?
yes, absolutely, right.
Yeah.
And getting, well, I mean, when we talk about, within the facets model, the primary characteristics, and that's what we're talking about, the secondary characteristics being, irritability,
Mhm.
agitation, short fused,
Mm.
right? These kids or teens or young adults who are cognitively inflexible get pegged as, well, they're really selfish. They don't care about anyone else but themselves. They always
Yeah.
have to have everything their way. They're just a real big problem. And when I talk with
I hear that a
okay,
lot. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, yeah. And so having
Not
somebody
about me.
that's right.
Maybe sometimes.
So with my 16-year-old who has a diagnosis of FASD, she was telling me about a conflict that she was having with a friend at school. And she was relaying to me and I said this, and she said this, and that kind of thing. And she told me what she said. And without even thinking, I said, well, I mean, you can imagine how that probably made her feel. I didn't even think about it. And my daughter said, I can't imagine it, Mom. That is the problem here. I was like, dang it. I know that
Yeah.
about her and I
Yeah.
missed it, right?
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
in that moment, she felt definitely agitation with me, felt
Mhm.
misunderstood, but also felt shamed. I'm sure she did, right? And I said, "Oh, I'm so sorry. Like I know that about you. I'm so sorry I didn't remember it." And so then
Yeah.
we worked to help her get into her friend's perspective, right?
Okay.
It's not that she couldn't do it at all. It's that she needed lots and lots of support to be
Okay.
more flexible in her thinking about it.
So what did that look like?
Well, so for my daughter, because I feel like over many, many, many years of parenting her in this way, her capacity to have these discussions to really help her kind of connect the dots and what led to what. Most of the time, she has the capacity to do that in the moment. It's part of the flow of our conversation. And the reason why I kind of start there is because I work with a lot of parents who their child just doesn't have the capacity, and that's part of their fragility.
Mhm.
So that
So
conversation,
the capacity to connect cause and effect?
the capacity to be given feedback and instruction, and I think about it as like us as parents wanting to like help our kids understand and our
Mhm.
wisdom and our
It's amazing how many parents want to be viewed as super wise by their kids, right?
right. They're like they just shut down or they blow up.
Yeah.
It's like they don't have the capacity to hear it in that moment, right?
Yeah.
And so for her, it really was just saying, I mean, in that moment, if somebody said this to you, like really making it self-focused, making it much, much more concrete to her, or me saying it to you, imagine I'm sitting here and I'm saying to you this, how does that make you feel? And she's like, I don't like it. And I was like, okay, so let's think about your friend. I mean, truly, like
Yeah.
step by step by step, right?
Yeah.
Helping her. But when we talk about accommodations for other parts of rigidity, like being able to go with the flow, the way I describe a lot of individuals who are cognitively inflexible is they go through life feeling this whiplash effect. Like, what?
Mm.
You didn't tell me? What? You're changing things on me? What? You weren't clear with me. When the person on the other end, usually the parent, is like, I was super clear with you. Like, what happened? It's like, well,
Yeah.
you weren't clear enough. They didn't have enough time to adjust to that change that you thought was really insignificant, right?
Or it might be you were very clear, but not using the words that make something clear to the other person.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Exactly. So raising the awareness of what that looks like, and then,
Mhm.
oh, why are these like more, nothing wrong with them, but more traditional parenting techniques, they're just not landing.
Yeah. And I think we can, everything that you've described so far, you can easily translate into marriages, seeing the same misinterpretations between spouses, or,
Absolutely.
girlfriend, boyfriend, or
That's right.
whatever that relationship is. Yeah.
Absolutely. So here's the other, you're speaking to it directly, is this is one of those skill sets that I categorize as a relational cognitive
Hmm.
skill. And I
Absolutely.
mean, that's what you're naming is
Yeah.
there's some cognitive skills that are required of any of us to be in a reciprocal, successful, give and take,
Hmm.
balanced relationship with another person. And when that's not happening, when it's out of balance, it's not reciprocal, whatever it might be, the
Not only youth, but also adults living with FASD struggle with socially is the inability to keep long term friendships,
yeah,
which is so easily tied into just exactly what you're saying, right?
yes,
Relational intelligence,
that's right.
and having those skills. Yeah.
Right, right. For a relation, any relationship, friendship, romantic, whatever it might
Hmm.
be, to be
Hmm.
deep and to be long lasting, there's skills involved in that. Um, when that's not happening, again, those people get categorized as they're just uncaring, they're
Hmm.
whatever it might be, all these very judgmental words.
Hmm.
But if we can look at it as like, no, this is skill based, and this skill just needs to be supported, understood,
Yeah.
cultivated.
Yeah.
Man, there's a lot more you can do there, right? It's much more hopeful and accurate
Yeah.
than the alternative perspective. Yeah.
Yeah. And I can share a little vignette about how this can create some wrinkles in life.
Yeah, please do.
As a foster care social worker, my company was huge as the number one priority is safety. And although we only do home inspections once a month, we don't wait for that once a month to address anything that we see as a potential hazard. And so I was out at a home actually doing a grief call. One of our foster parents, her, can't remember if they were living together and engaged or if they had just gotten married. I can't quite pull that from my memory. But at the end of my visit, I had I was going out a different door of their trailer than I had used to come in. And the railing was like super wobbly. And that part of my brain kicked in that said, number one thing is safety. This was not the week to address that.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I couched it in terms of when you get around to it, great, get around to it. In the
Hmm.
meantime, please have the kids use the other door.
Hmm. Hmm.
And that was, I don't know, they lived probably 45 miles from the office, but only maybe 10 miles from my house. So, of course, I was going home.
Yeah.
And the complaint was lodged with
Uh,
the office before I even got home. So, of course, I got confronted on it and told what a horrible, uncaring person I was. How tacky was that? And I burst out crying because I dearly cared for this woman.
yeah. Yeah.
And so, this kind of thing can happen in any relationship.
That's right. That's
Yeah.
right. Yes, it can. The other piece that you're speaking to, I think, is what happens when our nervous system goes into this protective state. And sometimes we know why and sometimes we don't. But, thinking about what was going on for her,
Mhm.
that she felt maybe in that slight or maybe more than slight fight or flight posturing or
Mhm.
stance. I always go like this because I'm like like
Yeah.
hunkering down into this
Yeah.
protective mode. And so, the polyvagal theory, Stephen Porges' work, Dana, they talk about how our story follows our state. And
Mhm.
so the story that we tell others about that experience follows the state of our nervous system.
Oh,
And so, I mean, it's such a perfect example of that too. And I imagine because of the situation that the relationship, the reason you're coming into contact with her, I would imagine that there's some reasons for her to have a fragile nervous system too.
mm, absolutely. Well, yeah, in the midst of grief, you're extremely
That's
fragile
right.
and extremely protective. And there's also the piece in that situation where oftentimes anger is part of grief. I mean, if you look at Keebler Ross, anger's always in the mix. somewhere. So I made a very convenient outlet
Yeah,
for a lot of that pissed offness.
that's right. I always
And I
say,
have to be okay with that. And I am. I get it.
yeah,
But
yeah.
I ticked her off, and then I was the one that was devastated.
Yeah. Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah. 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 I always say it's so much easier for people to be angry and pissed off than it is for them to be sad.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So,
Especially for the guys out there, right?
mhm.
It's one of those unwritten rules. Yeah, boys don't cry,
Well,
right?
it is the rule, right? That they
Yeah.
don't
Yeah.
dare break unless they have other prominent attachment figures in their life who are telling them it's okay to do
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
That's not always the
Cover
case.
it up with that anger,
Yeah.
whereas as girls, we get the opposite. It's not okay to be angry. So what do we do when we're actually furious? We
Yeah.
cry.
Right. Right. Yeah.
So rigidity, what are some other things that that we can do when to help us recognize that we're stuck?
hmm Yeah, well, that's a great way to describe it too, right? Is being stuck. If I think for adults who are listening where it resonates, or even teens, this may sound really like a vulnerable place to go, but I think one of the wisest things we can do is that if we have people in our life who we trust to give us feedback in a way that is empathetic and compassionate, we can say to them, like, hey, I'm learning about this thing, or I heard about this on this podcast and it really resonated with me. And
Mhm.
I'm wondering if you have experienced me that way. Or, like, these are some things that I heard that really stood out. Like, I can't disengage from an argument, I
Mhm.
just can't do it.
Mhm.
Or when I hear the word no, it is super triggering. Like that. And
Yeah.
it's not about hearing no in other ways. It literally is the word no. Like, can you just like give me a reality check on that? Like, is that what have you noticed that about me? Or when you see me acting in these ways, like what behavioral symptoms reflect the rigidity? When you see me behaving in these ways, you mind just like, let's develop a code word. Let's develop a way that I can
Mhm.
actually hear it in
Mhm.
that moment. But so that that can help soften, right?
That that's huge. That's huge
Yeah.
because most of us have experienced various forms of trauma. And coming from that trauma space, no often is a trigger word to
Yeah.
send us straight to fight or flight. I remember interacting with one, I was doing a home study for an adoption home study, and talking about what kinds of trainings have they done, trying to get ready for this huge shift in their lives. And he had taken a 2-hour class or a 4-hour class on
Mhm.
positive ways to say no.
Yeah.
How to say no without saying no.
It's exactly. Oh, I'm like throwing my earphones out here. That is, those are the exact words I've used. How
Yeah,
are we going to say no with parents I've worked with? How can
yeah,
we say no without saying no? Like, oh man, I wish that was a yes.
yeah. Well,
But oh, go ahead. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
his long story short was, however strongly your desire to put that fence there and to
Yeah.
say no just adds to the list of yes after you do blank. So if it's something that would ordinarily as a parent, you would say, hell no, that's never going to happen. Then you have such a long list of prerequisites
Yeah.
that they decide it's not worth it. I'm not going to do it.
Mm, yeah.
And come to that space on their own.
Yeah, yeah, well,
But
that's interesting. Yeah, because there's like when I've worked with parents, they're like, well, they're like that's just life. Like sometimes the answer is no, and there's
mm,
no other way about it. It's like, yeah, of course. It's not about, oh, you just let your kids do whatever they want, because they can't handle that. It's understanding where is their capacity and their window of tolerance in terms of receiving the no, and how do you help them? How do you soften the edges in the face of their rigidity,
yeah,
which is actually another piece of, just as I was saying that, with cognitive rigidity, when I talk about accommodations for it with parents, the number one accommodation is being really in tune with what's happening within you so
mhm,
that you don't meet their rigidity with your own rigidity and get
yeah.
into this kind of escalation pattern where it's
And a
like you
power
just
struggle. Yeah,
totally.
yeah.
Yeah. And that is so much easier said than done too. Yeah.
And that also applies to any kind of relationship. So, and
Mhm.
that's another skill that it's helpful if we can all develop in home.
Yeah. I mean, when you
So,
talk about what can folks do for themselves, even again, the people that they're closest to, that's where it's probably going to trip them up the most. And even in a work situation, right?
yeah.
Letting the people around them know, like, I know I have this tendency to kind of get locked into my idea, or I know I have this tendency to see things in other ways that are presented.
Mhm.
Can I just be real with you about that? And can you just kind of give me a reality check when that's happening? Right.
Mhm.
If you can be vulnerable enough to do that, and people are then it helps them understand where you're coming from. Like, oh,
Mhm.
okay, they have insight into this. Like they're really trying to change and I want to help them. Right. Most people have that inclination, I think.
Changes that frustration over to compassion.
Yeah, absolutely.
What are some other ways that you see rigidity play out for people living with FASD? What are some other things that we can do
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
catch ourselves in it?
Yeah. Yeah. One piece, which, well, I'll just say it and then I'll go from there, is having difficulty dealing with ambiguity. And where this can be a problem is if, you also struggle with the word no and that kind of harshness of that. Sometimes the alternative to that is, well, maybe later, or
Mhm.
we'll wait and see, right? And that also
Can trigger
doesn't.
people. Yeah.
Totally.
Yeah.
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
This is I'm thinking about, with my 16-year-old and making social plans basically. And I said to her, "Well, let's just wait and see. Like let's wait and I thought I was so generous because she was unsure about what she wanted to do and she just wanted me to tell her what to
Mhm.
do. And I said, "Well, it sounds like you're unsure. Why don't we just wait and see? We have time to wait and see." And she
Mhm.
said, "I need a plan right now, Mom." And I was like, "Okay, okay." Right?
Competing needs.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah.
And so for that teen or that adult living with
Mhm.
FASD, understanding that maybe that's what it takes in that moment to help you settle is to come up with a plan. And even if you have this knowledge that it could change or you have the power to change it, like write it down. Have
Mhm.
somebody
Mhm.
hold that plan with you so that can at least soothe whatever that anxiety, that overwhelm that's
Yeah.
coming up now. I think that is always a good idea.
So I just have to say that, do you know Jody Culp?
Just by name and
Okay.
reputation only.
There's 4 of us that are really good friends, and we get together on Zoom. We try to get together weekly, but we
Oh,
edit each other's
nice.
books.
Okay, okay.
And because we all write about FASD, and Jody is such a gifted writer. And her fictional books use the same cast of characters about a small Minnesota town, but at different points in time. And so the second of the books she's written take place, like the first book she wrote in, I want to say 2008. And then the book that just launched a year ago was, or a year and a half ago, maybe, was the same cast of characters, but like 2 generations down the road. And the next one is actually in between.
Okay.
So
Very cool. That's so creative.
she, I just read the last chapter I read deals with this in just this exact piece
Oh,
of ambiguity being very hard.
yeah.
One of the characters being, who perseverates and needing answers now,
Yes.
and
Yes.
getting some help with that from an
Yeah.
older gentleman who's like, let's make a plan. But what if it doesn't happen tomorrow? Then we'll
Yeah.
implement the plan anyway, at
Mhm.
least in our mind. We'll just keep practicing the plan.
Yeah.
And, it's funny the timing of our conversation with my having read that just yesterday.
Yeah. Yeah. I love it. I love it. Well,
Yeah.
what a creative way to write a book and tell a story. So
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm happy for all 4 of you that you have that
Thank
support
you. Oh my gosh, it's
support
been
for each
incredible.
other. Yeah,
It's
that's rare.
with Sip by Sip, it's the power of the collective edit is
Mhm.
what made the second edition so much of a better book than the original
Mm.
Sip by Sip. So,
Yeah. Yeah. Awesome.
yeah. Okay. Um, I, we had taught, you had mentioned several things that I'm thinking, okay, well, that relates to this other characteristic, or that relates to this other characteristic. What are some other things that you end up working with as
Yeah.
you deal with cognitive rigidity.
Yeah. Yeah. It is a big web, isn't it? I mean, at least that's
Very
what I've
much so.
come to believe. We try to
Yeah.
put them in these distinct categories to make them more manageable for our learning, I think,
Yeah.
but they really are all connected.
I think it's a way of attempting to make the abstract concrete for
Yeah.
ourselves.
Yes. Yes. That's
Yeah.
another very good way to put it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which
Um,
is one of the characteristics in and of itself,
yeah.
right?
Yep. Yep. When I'm talking about cognitive rigidity, it almost always links to or leads to emotional regulation skills and stress recovery skills is another way that I think about it. What is happening to, our internal energetic arousal level with situations that we find overwhelming, and are we able to recover? Are we able to deal with disappointment, even small ones, or
Yeah.
frustrations in, what would be considered by a larger society as pro-social or according to chronological age or whatever it might be?
Or met with that, you're making a mountain out of a molehill.
That's right. Does it feel disproportionate to those people around you?
Yeah.
And recognizing that your experience is what it is, the way that you are receiving all the information of that situation, your reality is what it is. And people around you misunderstand that. But having the people around you shift and be able to see, no, these are stress response skills. These are emotional regulation skills. They're regulatory skills. That's where we really get into the nervous system. And again, the brain and the nervous system, they're connected, right? It's hard to separate them,
Yeah.
but I do think it's linked hand in hand with cognitive rigidity, because if there's, for example, something doesn't go the way you expect it to, that's a disappointment. And are you able to rise and fall with the disappointments that life throws your way? That's emotional regulation skills, right? Like very, very similar and connected and overlapped, but both relational cognitive skills too. So being able to, I mean,
And we see this playing out even with some of the more traditional psychological approaches, like rational emotive theory, where you have an event, which is something that happened or we witnessed, or an expectation that wasn't met.
Yeah.
And then a thought, feeling, and behavior, whereas a thought is what did our mind say that meant? And the feeling is how did our body respond to that, which goes to the nervous system.
That's
And
right.
then action coming out from there. And that's even though we have found with FASD, we often are not well served by all these cognitive approaches. This is one that I think is applicable. I use a couple different classic examples of this. So like at a red light, a traffic light, red means stop, green means go, but what does yellow mean? It could mean slow down and stop, or it could mean go very fast.
Yeah, accelerate and get through.
Right? Right?
And my kids would tell you which one it means to me, but I won't self-disclose.
Well, and I think there's a lot that goes into that. Like what is going on in your world at the time? If I am late for a meeting, I'm going to choose the go very fast.
Yeah.
Right? And probably be looking over my shoulder, were there any cops? But if I don't have any deadlines, then I might choose to slow down. There's this whole interplay between what we're telling ourselves and what we end up feeling and then doing as a result. And so those are also some things we can do once we've caught ourselves.
Yeah.
And,
Yep.
how to move past it.
Yeah. Yeah. And, acknowledging that for some people, that process that you described so well can feel really clunky and foreign if you're not used to pausing and reflecting that way. And that just makes you human. And what it maybe means is you need some support so that you can get more comfortable with it and then be on your way, right?
Yeah, or another example that I often use when explaining this way of looking at things to people is imagine being back at a school dance and you excuse yourself to use the restroom. And when you come back to, at least where I grew up, the school dances unless it was the prom, the school dances were in the gym. And, where acoustics are horrible. It's very crowded. And you see your significant other on the other side of this crowded room
Yeah.
and he or she is up close with someone of the opposite gender, how do you interpret that?
Yeah.
Do you say, "She's moving in on my guy," or "He's two-timing me," or, do you go with that approach and feel jealousy as a result? And
Mhm.
what's the action that comes from that? You either leave or you go over and
Yeah.
start a physical conflict, right? Whether it's a slap or whatever, versus my guy, my girl, whatever the case is so good at science, and that other person needs help. I
Okay.
bet she asked him something.
Yeah. Also
Leads
pointing back to the story follows state, right? The story
Yeah,
we tell ourselves follows the
yeah,
state. Yeah.
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 And it leads to very different feelings, leads to very
Right.
different actions. So,
Right.
yeah. Yeah, that's exactly it. The story follows the state.
Yeah. Yeah. I can't remember if
Mysteries.
it's Steve Porges or Deb Dana, one of their works. They kind of coined that term. It stuck with me.
Yeah, well, it's a good one. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what else comes to mind in
Mm.
terms of rigidity? What else do you
Yeah.
often end up? Where do you take that a lot of time?
Yeah. Yeah. I feel like we've covered it. I mean, we've talked
Okay.
about a lot of the characteristics. We've talked about the misinterpretation of it, the way it
Mhm.
can impact relationships, raising awareness of that, maybe
Yeah.
how we can get support. Yeah, get
Mhm.
support in that and just be much kinder to ourselves if that's something that's resonating with someone listening, like, that's
Yeah.
definitely a part of my neurobiological makeup, and that just
Yeah.
makes you human.
I think too, having everybody who struggles with this, even if it's only occasionally, identify someone who can be your safety net
Yeah.
for when you are met with disappointments in life,
Yep.
because there will be a lot of disappointments in life.
Yeah. Yeah.
You
And
know,
somebody who won't try to convince you that your feelings aren't valid
yeah,
or that it's not a big deal. Yeah, they'll just
yeah,
be with you, right? I mean, that's what
right,
we all need. We have a
right.
biological imperative for people to be with us in our distress.
Yeah,
So,
yeah. We don't necessarily need the solution or
no,
for things to be fixed.
no,
We just
no.
need to be heard and
Yeah.
supported. Yeah. Well, I know you have other things that you need to be doing, that you need to be going. So I want to honor your time. And I'm so grateful that you were able to, sit in and talk with me and
Oh my
have this
gosh, it's
candid
great.
conversation. It was so much fun.
Yeah, it was great to see you and to connect like this again. It had been too
Yeah.
long, and I
Yeah.
enjoyed hearing about what your work has looked like over the last several years. And I'm
Yeah.
just so grateful for your presence in this community in this podcast. So thank you for asking me to
Thank you.
play a tiny part in it by coming on as a
Yeah.
guest.
Well, we'll have to do it again.
Sounds like a plan.
All right.
All right. Thanks, Patti.
Bye.
Okay, take care.
I hope you found today's candid conversation to be enjoyable, hopefully humorous. Definitely, I hope you found it valuable in terms of adding to the depth and breadth of your knowledge about fetal alcohol spectrum disorders. It is my honor and great pleasure to bring more perspectives and more information to you week by week. I want to thank you for being a valuable part of this podcast family. And please like, share, and subscribe to the podcast on whatever platform you follow me on so that more people can discover the show and learn more about FASD in the process. If you want to reach out to today's guest, please check the show notes for their contact information, any links that they provided for me to share with you. Also, there will be links for the things that I have to offer. For instance, any professional development training or community organization training that you might be interested in ranging for, or coaching services for yourself as a neurodivergent adult or as a parent of a little, please check out my website at patriciakasper.com. And if you want to pick up a copy of my book, Sip by Sip, Candid Conversations with Adults Living with FASD, you can do so at books.by/yourfasdcoach or on Amazon. Okay, that is a wrap. I want to thank you again for showing up week after week. I hope you really enjoyed today's candid conversation, and we'll see you next time. Take care.